When someone steals your credit card, you cancel it. If your social security number is compromised, you get a new one. These violations are recoverable. You cannot cancel your child's DNA. A human genetic sequence is the complete biological instruction set for who that child is, what diseases they might carry, and how they will develop. It exists in exactly one edition. If that biological blueprint is extracted and copied by malicious actors, it cannot be revoked. The children whose data is exposed will grow into adults, applying for jobs and insurance in a world where their most intimate biological traits have already been permanently compromised. In 2015, the National Institutes of Health launched the Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development, or ABCD, study. Supported by $500 million in federal funding, it enrolled 20,000 children across 21 research sites nationwide. Participating children lay motionless inside MRI machines, so researchers could capture high-resolution images of their developing brain structures. After stepping out of the scanner, they provided saliva and blood samples. Researchers then banked these biospecimens to extract the children's complete genetic sequences. To enlist participants, specifically families of color, the study deployed marketing materials promising absolute safety. They reassured vulnerable parents that the federal government would act as a vigilant, impenetrable guardian of their children's biological information. By engineering an ironclad sense of trust, the government successfully assembled the most comprehensive database of American childhood biology ever attempted. The NIH deposited this massive collection of biological data into a central digital repository, known as the National Data Archive. The agency removed direct identifiers like names, but the remaining information was quasi-identifiable. When you combine a specific brain scan, a DNA strand, and a zip code, you create a biological fingerprint. True anonymization is impossible against a highly motivated actor. The profiles are functionally re-identifiable. Under federal regulations, specifically Subpart D of the Common Rule, children enrolled in research studies require heightened, aggressive legal protections because they cannot advocate for themselves. In practice, the primary enforcement mechanism for these protections was administrative paperwork. Approved users simply signed a digital data use agreement promising they would follow security best practices and conduct ethical research. The NIH constructed a multi-million-dollar digital fortress to house the nation's most sensitive biological data, and they secured the perimeter by asking visitors to promise they would behave. Once a researcher gained access and downloaded the data, the NIH had no downstream visibility. There was no algorithm monitoring the files, no automated tripwire for unauthorized transfers, and no real-time auditing of how the data was actually used. As one rogue researcher who exploited this system explicitly stated, the institutional philosophy was simple. They, quote, sort of assume good faith in people. Government watchdogs explicitly warned the agency. The Government Accountability Office concluded the NIH lacked resources to proactively monitor downloads and was likely missing severe violations. This chart shows the timeline of known security failures prior to the ABCD breach. The counter tracks at least 63 documented instances where NIH genomic data was improperly released to researchers who either mischaracterized their projects or violated data use limits. The vault holding 20,000 children's DNA was never defeated by a sophisticated cyber attack. It was left open for anyone willing to check a digital box and lie about their intentions. An unidentified researcher operating out of China easily extracted ABCD genomic data from the portal. They bypassed the geographic safeguards entirely by simply fabricating an affiliation with an American university. Meanwhile, an American professor named Brian J. Pesta gained access to the same data. The NIH had already flagged Pesta in 2022 for mishandling a separate database of child brain scans, yet he still acquired the ABCD files. Pesta bypassed the remaining restrictions by using an authorized collaborator. That collaborator downloaded the files legally and then transferred them to Pesta informally, breaking their data use agreement with zero immediate friction or detection from the NIH. Institutional verifications failed. Geographic filters failed. Background flags failed. That actors walked directly through the front door and extracted the data effortlessly. Once genomic data crosses the portal threshold and moves offline, the exposure is obsolete. It escapes the NIH's visibility completely. allowing it to be copied, manipulated, and distributed indefinitely without any oversight. The unalterable biological blueprints of 20,000 American children are now permanently out of government control. Those exact sequences currently live in the hard drives and academic citations of ideological extremists. The government succeeded in building the most comprehensive database of childhood biology in human history. They gathered the data, built the vault, and simply forgot to lock the door. And out there in the dark, someone was already... In 2022, Brian J. Pesta, a business professor at Cleveland State University, began operating at the intersection of fringe genomics and academic credentialism. He was the key American link in a network that walked directly into the largest pediatric brain data set in the country. This wasn't a sophisticated cyber attack. The National Institutes of Health operated on an assumption of good faith, relying on an honor system where researchers signed agreements promising to act ethically. Pesta and his collaborators simply exploited that institutional naivete to bypass the safeguards meant to protect 20,000 children. Once the dataset was downloaded, the network took actions that explicitly violated federal data use agreements. They submitted the children's genetic profiles to an unauthorized overseas DNA laboratory to estimate physical traits, including skin, eye, and hair color. A $500 million federal initiative designed to help children thrive had been repurposed. The biological maps of these minors became the raw material for a pseudo-scientific arsenal. This map shows how that data was weaponized. The network used the stolen profiles to produce at least 16 separate papers and preprints. These papers invoked the authority of the ABCD study to launder a specific, odious argument that racial IQ differences have a biological basis. They used federal data to construct a hierarchy that ranks ancestor groups by purported genetic intelligence. While mainstream geneticists condemned the work as scientifically invalid, the damage was already digital. These papers were published in fringe journals, indexed across the web, and ultimately ingested by AI language models. The genetic data of these children has been transmuted into a toxic citation. It is now a permanent part of the automated knowledge systems that generate answers for the rest of the world. The National Institutes of Health eventually confirmed the misuse. Internal records show the agency was aware that Pesta had violated his agreements and that his network's race science papers were circulating online. This timeline captures a history of neglect. Before the ABCD breach, the NIH had already logged 63 instances where genomic datasets were improperly released. Despite repeated warnings from government watchdogs, the agency failed to build a real-time monitoring system. Faced with the ABCD findings, the NIH relied on a specific technical classification to frame their response. They argued that because the data was de-identified, with direct names removed, no official data breach had occurred. This ignores the fact that genetic signatures linked to demographics and brain scans are functionally re-identifiable. By prioritizing these technical definitions, the institution effectively shielded itself from the legal requirements of a public disclosure. Following that technical determination, the NIH made a deliberate choice. They decided not to inform the families of the 20,000 children that their data had been misused for race research. The parents who handed over their children's DNA did so because of a federal promise. They were shown illustrations of scientists carefully guarding their information. But when that protection failed, the NIH chose a path of institutional silence and kept the breach invisible to the participants. The families only learned the truth because of an external investigation. In early 2026, New York Times journalists contacted the parents directly, informing them for the first time that their children's biological blueprints had been compromised years earlier. For the agency, the priority was risk management and institutional stability. The families were left to find out from the newspaper that the trust they placed in the government had been exploited. When a credit card is stolen, you cancel it. When a password is compromised, you hit reset. Digital identity theft is a disaster, but the credentials themselves are replaceable. DNA does not work that way. A child's biological instruction set exists in exactly one edition. It cannot be revoked, it cannot be reissued. Once that data is extracted and archived by eugenicists, it has escaped the vault forever. These 20,000 children will become adults seeking employment, insurance, and security clearances. They will navigate that world knowing that their stolen genetic code is already being used by people who believe those sequences mark them as inferior. The biological blueprints were taken, and the breach was confirmed. But the most enduring part of this failure is the silence of the guards who watched the vault door swing open and chose never to tell the families why.